I have the pleasure of rounding off the day and kind of trying to have an insight into what we can do next. So basing on the insights we've had today, how do we look ahead? And luckily, I have this amazing panel with me to help us address the future leaders' concerns and ideas. So we have Wisdom Lane, who is Community Engagement Manager at Tile Yard Education. We have Mary Walls, who is Director of Communication at Euston. We have Georgie Speller, who's Head of Sixth Form at Maria Fidelis. And we have Phil Carey, who is Chief Executive of New Horizon Youth Centre. Great. As Emma mentioned, we have made a video and asked the people who this is all about the question that needs to be answered. So please also, while we watch the video, you also have a think about questions you would like to ask the panel. Note them down so we can be ready for a good amount of questions as well. So let's take a look at the video.
The star of change in central London.
A kaleidoscope of culture.
Bustling, loud, different, but sometimes overwhelming.
You just see the place heaving with people.
Like the change is completely, it blows my mind away, really.
I like the atmosphere.
Before it's just busy, you just want to get out of the area, but now you want to have a look around, you want to do things in the area.
The diversity, it opens up different conversations for people to talk to new people and experience things they haven't experienced before.
I like how central it is.
It's kind of the central hub for transport.
It's literally right between Angel, Camden.
It makes me feel happy within my area. It makes me feel it's something I can talk about.
I can definitely say opportunity, the ability to look around the area and actually see great things happening. I feel like that's kind of what's lacking at this moment.
Poverty and homelessness.
We do have quite a lot of homeless people on the streets, and it would be great trying to find some sort of support.
I feel like the one thing that's missing is the connection between the students of Islington and the students of Camden. King's Cross is in the middle both of the two boroughs, so perhaps having more opportunities for both to come together, because ultimately we don't work individually, we need to work collectively in order to make change.
Going through a swift process in HS2.
There's places being knocked down and having to relocate because of HS2, but in the long run, I think it's going to be a good development.
There's so many cars every single day, and it's contributing to pollution and global warming.
I think because it's so congested, there's not a lot of green spaces, and so we need a bit more pockets of trees and open air.
You can see the golfing class, really, in the way it looks, the opportunities.
That separation, I'm not exactly sure why. It's also quite apparent as well, you know, N1C looks considerably different to N1.
So I like to see the community together, both sides of King's Cross together.
So King's Cross should be doing more in order to bring them areas together, such as Caledonian Road, Somers Town.
I see the community having expanded a lot more, but also a lot more diverse.
I like to see youth clubs and football pitches for young children because there's not many at the moment, so I just tend to go home.
If they listen to our ideas and they listen to us, I think it could be better for the young people.
The image I would like for it to have, positive. Nothing but positive.
The big companies from King's Cross should be helping out a lot more because they have the money to do so or the resources to help out.
Bigger businesses like Google and YouTube could do more, and the only way they're going to be able to do that is by cooperating with the youth.
Again, Google's just down the road. You know, working in collaboration with the young people here, there's a lot of creative talent in Cali, and there's a lot of young people with loads of ideas.
The big companies should take that into consideration.
It's about coming together again. The only time I really see things going on in King's Cross is when I'm walking through. Not that I've seen a leaflet in my local youth club or on our road saying in King's Cross this is going on this day at this time, come down. I think it's a bit too separate at the moment.
There's always room for improvement, and I feel like you need to think about everyone from all different ages, all different colours, so even the homeless.
But while you expand, help other people grow.
Helping maybe set things up within the area, as a partnership.
I feel as though the retail shops are overpriced and they're not relatable to youth.
Cooperate with the youth because they are what builds the future.
My message to urban partners is to not just watch this video and not implement our ideas, and help us, the youth, work with the elders to make this community a better place.
Great. So taking off from that last comment of, now we're done watching, it's now time for us to actually roll up our sleeves and implement and do, or at least start with talking about how we can do it and what we can do. We've heard a lot of really great things about the area. It's the start of a change. People have mentioned that as well, to the point where your mind gets blown. It's a place for new conversation, new experiences. It's a kaleidoscope of cultures. It's different, it's diverse, it's a hub. It's busy, but it's also sometimes overwhelming. But for this session, I'd like to focus on the challenges mentioned in the video and address some of those questions to the panel. Let me start with a question for you, Wisdom. One of the young people in the video said that he found there was a lack of opportunities, that he couldn't go around in the area and just see great things happening. I think what we've heard today, and as members of Urban Partners, I think a lot of companies feel that they're doing that or trying to, but obviously not good enough. So what's wrong and what can be done better?
I think, as was mentioned earlier, I think it's a lot to do with the relationships that we have with maybe the key stakeholders in the community and knowing the businesses. So as if I take Cali Road, for example, one of the great places to know and connect with is Dallas Chicken Shop, because it tends to be where a lot of the young people go through. But do businesses know that, and do the guys who work in Dallas know who to speak to in Havas? And it's how does that relationship get brokered? Because it generally tends to be there are key people within communities who know things, but from the point of view of you being in the community, you can see that there are all of these businesses, but how do I Google who's in Google? And how do I know that that person is the right person in Google to Google? And it's those types of things. So it's really important to have these kind of events, because these are the places where you get to meet them. And I think that actually, I often feel sometimes like the opposite is true. There is loads of opportunity. Opportunity is not something that we have a problem with. The issue is, do the people who the opportunities are for know how to respond to those opportunities? And do they feel that they are presented to them in a way that is for them? Because if you feel excluded, so if I give the example, shall I say, of if I say to you, let's go, I've got 2 tickets to go and climb Mount Everest next week, that might be an amazing thing. If you can climb, have a passport, understand altitude sickness, do you know what I mean? Have a warm jacket. If you don't have any of those things, that opportunity could kill you. So it's about understanding what are the needs of the people within the area and having the relationship with those stakeholders to be able to bring people on that journey.
So it's a role for companies to go and actually put flyers into Dallas Chicken Shop, or is it more about finding that middle connection that you
It's about finding those middle connections. I think it's about, there are people within communities who already have those relationships. And I think there was a mention about having some sort of funnel. And I think that's really, really important, and being able to connect those who know already and already have those existing relationships, because it's a lot about trust. I used to work for a youth charity, and one of the things that I used to do every year was take 20 young people to see Cirque du Soleil at the Royal Albert Hall. Now, for most of the kids, they'd never heard of it. And they'd also never thought that they would be able to go into the Royal Albert Hall. But when they went in, they found out there's loads of things that the Royal Albert Hall does for young people. There are talks, there are panels, there's all sorts of things going on, and there's these amazing performances. But it just isn't the thing that they would have picked up the phone and gone, you know what? Cirque's coming. I should go to that. And it's about understanding and appreciating it. And I've never had anyone come out of there going, oh, that was boring. It was always amazing. But it isn't the thing that they would have immediately gone to. And it's just about appreciating that. And because they know me, they went with me because of me. And it's about understanding there are a number of those kind of stakeholders in every community. And if you can build relationships of trust with them, they already have the relationships of trust.
I think that's a really good point. As you said, the opportunities are created by people who know how to take them. Yeah. But how do we then empower young people to be able to take the opportunities?
Well, I'll jump in there and I'll let somebody else answer in a second. But I specifically created something at, so if I give a little bit of understanding of XLP. XLP is a youth charity that works in 9 boroughs across London. I was their head of arts for 8 years. And what I found was, so I come from a music industry background, and I had loads of links for tickets and various other things. So we would audition young people in schools, put them on showcases, and then ask them what other things they would like to get involved in within the industry. And I had a situation where I had 50 tickets to see Jay-Z at the O2. And I sent a text message out to 400 young people. 10 of them replied. And I was like, are you mad? These are tickets for Jay-Z. And then I realized in calling that it was, well, I don't know if my mum's going to give me permission to go. Who's going to babysit? How am I going to be picked up? Do I have enough money to buy food there? Because I don't want to be embarrassed by the fact that I can't afford to eat while everybody else is. And there were all these other barriers. So we created something called opportunities training, which was, right, these are the different types of opportunities, good, bad, and God, and these are how you respond to them. You need to commit, commence, compete, and complete. Right? And if you do those things, you'll make the most of it. This is how you ring someone back. It's the third time that you meet a contact that they actually become useful. It's those types of things, and teaching people how to network and getting them used to being in different environments that weren't always their own. And when you did those things, I found that the kids were like, oh, okay, well, I know the rules now. I understand this area a bit more, and I'm more open to getting involved and responding. And when you then start seeing people taking up opportunities and going out to gigs on their own and going to various different places, you get that they get it. And I think that that's the thing sometimes. If you've come from a background where you just would go to the theatre, it's easy to go to the theatre. Yeah. If you haven't, you won't.
Yeah. Georgie, you work with students every day. Is that something you see as well, that there is a lack of knowing how to take an opportunity, and is there some advice you can give on how to help young people in that?
Yes, I would say that that's definitely true. I think I get frustrated sometimes because I get presented with an awful lot of amazing opportunities. I announce it and 2 people put their hand up. And sometimes it takes a bit of coercing. Sometimes it takes my knowledge of the people to go up to them and say, this would be good for you, you should go, type thing. But again, you know, when you've got 500 students, that's not going to be plausible. You can't do that for that, or viable, that you can't do that for that many students. What we noticed happen with Eurostar, when we started the homework club with Eurostar, is that it happened with word of mouth, and that's actually very powerful with youth. Word of mouth is one of the most important methods that we can use, even in terms of promotion. You know, we are actually thinking that that's the easiest way to promote our sixth form these days. So word of mouth and being the kind of talk of the moment is all that we can rely on, I think. At the moment, I think Wisdom's completely right when he says that students need training in how to accept opportunities. Yeah.
And there's something, isn't there, around the peer influence?
Yeah.
You know, when we started the homework club, which was a very simple little initiative, and it sprang out of the people here, the team here at King's Place, noticing there are a lot of young people studying upstairs in the reception area. And that was because in many cases there wasn't enough space at home, or it wasn't sufficiently quiet, and the libraries were all absolutely rammed. And they brought the issue to Urban Partners to a meeting and said, well, we're seeing this, what can we do about this? And we stepped forward and said, well, from 5 o'clock onwards in the evening, there's nobody in our offices. Why don't we open our offices and just provide a quiet space where students can study and feel secure and know that they're in a comfortable place. And then out of that came so many other things, because we started doing that, and I think we started with 6, didn't we? And we've now got 39, and they not just come to us, but go to other businesses like Springer Nature and other businesses in the area. And what we found was that peer influence, that word of mouth, was really how the recruitment drive happened. It didn't happen because we went out and physically recruited. They recruited each other, and they start to come as a group of friends, and that makes them feel comfortable. It's like anything in life, I guess. And then we discovered that actually there were subjects that some of our colleagues could help the young people with. French conversation, unsurprisingly, we're an Anglo-French business. We've got brilliant French speakers. So that started to give them the edge on that, but now we've got tutorials on history and politics and English and a whole range of subjects. So it really sprang organically, didn't it, out of the students. They're finding it valuable, and then that pushed the whole initiative along. And I think the other thing it did was it started to help demystify what a business is like. Because, you know, the students come into our business, they see that actually it's perfectly normal people just going about doing their jobs. We haven't all got horns, but you know, if you, not many of us anyway, not during the working day, and so they realised that actually, even though this is an environment I didn't know anything about and I wouldn't have felt comfortable in, or I thought I wouldn't have felt comfortable in, actually this is fine. I understand this now. I guess it's knowing the rules. Yeah.
I'd like to stay on that for a bit. Of course, Eurostar have done great work with the Homework Club, as we also hear from Georgie. There is, though, young people saying in the video that companies need to do more and do that in collaboration and cooperation with the local youth. We've also heard earlier on the day that it's about being ambitious and thinking long term. So if we're trying to be ambitious and thinking long term, what should companies do?
I mean, the Homework Club is an interesting one because I've often been of the view, and it's something we've discussed at Urban Partners, that actually that is completely scalable. And I think any initiative, and I'm sure this is clearly what you've done with your charity work, Wiz, but I think any initiative where you can really scale it up, and it might start small, but then you can replicate it, and it's simple, that then is the key to doing it. And actually, if you think about something like Homework Club, all you need is an office with some willing colleagues and people to help, and a school that will collaborate and cooperate with you. And we've been very lucky having Georgie been such a driver with her sixth formers. But actually, that's a very simple formula. So I would love to think that that could be replicated all over the country, and there's no reason why it couldn't. And I think where we can do that, Andrew was talking about the Wellbeing Walk earlier, another example of something that's simple and could be replicated. And I suspect there are other opportunities like that as well.
It's also really good from our perspective because we get so many opportunities emailed to us now. So many companies are really sitting up and noticing that they've got to do more for young people in their area. So I get kind of like sometimes up to 10, 15 emails a day saying, I've got this new opportunity for your students. But quite frankly, we haven't got the capacity to run all of them. There aren't enough staff in the school to find the right students, write a list, get all the feedback forms back, get all the permission slips back. And the great thing about Eurostar is that admin is gone for me. Yes, I have to maintain a spreadsheet. Yes, I have to chase the odd student when they haven't attended for a couple of weeks. But actually, there's no work involved in it for me. And frankly, that's really wonderful. And so that is what's so brilliant, because the businesses are actually really, really helping out the young people and the schools. And schools need that at the moment, and the kids.
Phil, from your perspective, because of course one of the other challenges that was mentioned in the video is very much about the poverty and the homelessness in the area, and you being executive director for New Horizon, is a homeless and a centre for youth. Is that your kind of idea as well? What is needed for support in that?
I'm surprised it's only mentioned once, to be honest. I mean, young people become homeless for lots of different reasons. One of the big reasons is there aren't enough houses. So if you think at every stage of what you might call property within this city, that there isn't enough of it, full stop. What is there is totally unaffordable to buy or to rent, and there isn't enough social housing, there isn't enough what is deemed affordable housing, which we all know is not affordable in the first place. So young people, families are becoming homeless, and even for young people, what we're saying is there isn't enough routes out of homelessness for them. So there's not enough hostel provision in this borough or across the city. There isn't enough emergency shelter even. So at the moment it's great. There are winter shelters popping up. C4WS, I don't know if they're here, are running the winter shelters across Camden. It's a lifeline for lots of the young people we support, but that's only from December till March. Outside of that, there's only one shelter that exists where we can send young people.
Yeah, you said that companies are always very generous around Christmas, and then they disappear in January. So what can companies do, or even on an individual level, what kind of support can we offer?
Well, I think it's about three things, and we've talked about some of them. So there's obviously a massive bit about housing and the opportunities that are there for people when they become homeless, so whether that's shelters or hostels. Now, that's possibly outside of the remit of a lot of the people in this room in terms of what they do. But I think the other two things are about opportunities and about career prospects. So we were talking to some young people at the centre the other day about being homeless and working, and lots of young people are disproportionately affected by all of these things. So if you're 18 to 20, minimum wage is £5.90. If you think London living wage is suggesting, I think it's £10.80 now. It's almost double that. But if you look at what technically an affordable rent in this area would be, you'd probably need to be earning £16 an hour. So there's that bit of it. There's also the kind of roles that young people get. So they are 3 times more likely to be on a 0 hours contract to the rest of the working population. So they're getting paid less, they have more precarious positions, and they're already affected by an insane housing crisis within this city. I think the third thing is because, and it's brilliant, I know there are youth clubs here, like CYP are here, but there are less opportunities, full stop, for young people in this city, whether they're statutory or voluntary or just in their community. And those things are critical. Yes, people want a home. Yes, they want a job. But the way they access those things is through these opportunities, the thing Wisdom's just talking about. And I think that's where urban partners and the people in the room can play a good role.
Wisdom, in your opinion, what should companies do more of, or what should they invent, or what should they just basically do?
I think I love the Homework Club. I think that's a really, really great example of uses of space. I know that Islington are just putting forward that they want every young person before the age of 16 to have done 100 hours of work experience, for example, and should have had 11 cultural experiences by the age of 11. So that's about interacting with some of the spaces and knowing, for example, what's going on here at King's Place. I remember not knowing that this room was here, having come back by King's Place on a number of occasions. And it's about being able to connect in with the events here, for example. So have asked, and I know this because there's a young person I mentor who works there, have loads of tickets to stuff on a regular basis. It's like, how does those get out of the office, if it's at all possible? And, you know, it's about breaking down the understanding of employment. So we had an Urban Partners careers fair recently, and one of the things that I've kind of pushed for, and I'd really love to see, is rather than just having Google there, have Sodexo or whoever is their partner who does the catering, because those are immediate jobs for young people. It's great to talk about coding, that's great, but for most young people between the ages of 16 and 18, their concern is, how do I buy trainers? Or how do I buy FIFA with this? And if you understand that first, you start understanding, well, okay, if I can get you in the building of Google by working in our concessions or as a barista, then you might be coming up in the lift with someone from HR, and you can have the conversation about, well, how do I get a job here? And sometimes it's about being in the environments and thinking of other ways that you engage on various different levels. I think it's really important to understand as well what some of the barriers to opportunities are. So, for example, whenever young people work with us at Tileyard, we do a questionnaire, and one of the questions is, you know, what are your barriers to you achieving your dreams? And the 2 answers that come up as top are self-confidence and fear of embarrassment. We spoke earlier about people using the fountains outside on Granary Square and not wanting to go into Central St Martin's. Well, a big part of that is, are security going to stop me and ask me what am I doing here? And it's about getting over that understanding of that this is a free space, because it seems to be open quite happily here with the fountains, but anywhere else other than this, I'm not sure if I'm going to be accepted. And having personally had the experience of gone to the door at YouTube Space and being told they won't open the door unless I have 10,000 subscribers, that, when I can see the receptionist in the glass door speaking to me on the phone, that is the concern. It's, am I welcome? And again, it's a lot about building relationships to make sure people feel welcome or understand the way to enter, like knowing what the rules, as I say, knowing what the rules are. So I think businesses can do a few things like that, and you know, especially, as I say, understanding entry-level jobs. So for LNER, I remember them mentioning that they often open at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's difficult to get staff in without any transport because they're a train station and no one can get to a train station until the train station opens. But people who work in the local community could get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, help open up and then go on to college. And I know for myself, I worked for Marks and Spencer's when I was in my teens in Marble Arch, because I was going to college in Paddington, and I would ride in, start at 6 o'clock in the morning, finish at 9, and then go do my college day and go home. And that made my money for me, but it fit in around the other things that were going on in my life. So it's kind of looking at what are those things and listening and asking the right kind of questions is, what is it that you need? Because we often, as you said, people come to you with opportunities that they haven't actually asked you if you need. And I remember an anecdote about a friend of mine who was doing some outreach work with homeless people. And he was saying that they'd gone with blankets. And one of the guys turned to him and said, "Why you keep giving us blankets? Everyone gives us blankets. What I'd really like is a pillow." And it was like he went to Matalan and bought the guy a pillow and then got into a conversation. And it's sometimes we assume that people want recording studios or people want this, and you haven't actually always asked. And I think the Homework Club is, again, a really great example of we just needed a space with internet, you know, and it's those sorts of things.
So it's also making sure that there is an actual, real, tangible need that you address, not just as a company doing it for your CSR.
This is really great, yeah.
Yeah, we've quickly briefed on that when we talked out back about also in your field of work. There's a lot of volunteering that just would like to come in for a day and help the homeless in that sense. And so do you have a better way where you can build that self-confidence and trying to eliminate embarrassment?
Yeah, and I'm also giggling because we've got a loft full of sleeping bags, which we do also really need, but that's the thing that everyone thinks we always need is sleeping bags, so we just have them everywhere. Well, we've got a list, actually. I'm happy to send it to anyone, because Christmas, this is the kind of classic thing, is we get so many companies contacting us at Christmas saying, can we help them donate? But for the other 11 months of the year, kind of people forget about the issue. We're slightly different because we're a day centre, so young people come to us from 10:30 to 4 every day. We're different also because we're 7 days a week, so that offers opportunities for people who can't get out of work to come in and do things differently. Obviously, we are just one organisation supporting young people. There'll be youth clubs operating of an evening, so I think that's one thing to consider is, as a business, where is your available time and what's the best way of making it working? So if you need to do it in the daytime, somewhere like us might be good. If actually you're encouraging staff to do it of an evening, then homework clubs, things at the end of a day might be better for them. The thing for us is it's not helpful to have people popping in for a day to help the homeless. The young people we work with are vulnerable, and we're very careful about bringing people in to kind of, I've helped someone. That's so we do look for people with a kind of more meaningful long-term relationship, but we've done good things. We've got a recruitment consultant. We run pretty much daily. We have one of our rooms as a job club where we're supporting people to write CVs, apply for jobs, do interview prep, and we have a recruitment consultancy coming in doing a day a week. That's their bread and butter job. It really helps us. We have lots of businesses using their skills to train people up. All those things are helpful, but I think the point is you have to start with the young people. What's right for them? And it might be they just want to do it to enjoy themselves. So we always say the young people who come to us are young first, they're homeless second, and they might want to do stuff that's just fun. So I think last night we took a bunch of people to the football, so we had loads of England, USA tickets. But it's the same. It's like, how do you... Suddenly then you've got to pay for all these people's travel, and then they've got to have all the food because everyone else is going to be eating. And even with free things, there's often associated costs. We've got to pay our staff to go and do it. So that's the bit to think through.
So if anyone has Nando's vouchers for them.
That would be amazing.
Or Papa John's.
Yeah. Great. Well, let's go back to then what is all about the young people then, because one of the issues raised as well in the video is that there seemed to be a missing connection both between both sides of the development, but also between the students of Camden and the students of Islington. And Georgia, as someone who works with students in Camden, how can that happen?
That's a big question. I think where we work in Camden, the Maria Fidelis is a Catholic school, and it doesn't actually have a catchment area as a consequence. So a lot of the students at Maria Fidelis do actually come from Islington and even further afield. We've got students commuting from Essex, So from where I work, I can't see that barrier being as strong, as pronounced as one of the students said it was. However, obviously, I think it does, if there is a perceived barrier, it does need to be broken down. At the moment, I'm trying to forge a link through Urban Partners have helped me facilitate it with EGA, which is in Islington, which I think is really important. I know that, for example, the Camden and Islington Youth Councils came together with again, that was thanks to Urban Partners, and created a youth expo. I think it was about a year ago. And that was another example of them working together. And I think if we continue to foster those kind of relationships, then that's really positive. I also think we need an Urban Partners that focuses more on the kind of, I suppose Urban Partners, for me, because I'm in Camden, I imagine Urban Partners only works in Camden, but I think they probably do loads and loads and loads with Islington as well. But we need more Urban Partners basically, to bring together businesses in all the areas. Yeah.
I think strangely, there's also an issue with transport, which you wouldn't think with Euston, St Pancras and King's Cross. It's a transport hub. However, there's only one bus that goes up York Way, and there isn't a bus that I'm aware of that will go from Caledonian Road or Copenhagen Street to Somerstown. And even more so, you've got, with the overground, which was Zone 2, you've got Caledonian Road, and there's 2 miles between that and Camden Road, which separate the two boroughs. I understand that there used to be a train stop on the same line in, not the York Way tube station, but actually Maiden Lane. And I understand that there's some talk about whether that could be reopened, because that would be great, because it would allow people from the actual local community, because it is, from Cally Road to Granary Square is a 20-minute walk. So just even physical transport, I think, is a part of it. There is also a sense that, and I'm a South Londoner, so please don't anyone be particularly upset, but I haven't found anywhere else in London where the two councils are so close and so similar, but it's not an easy relationship. And it is, and as where we are at Tower Yard in Islington, the other side of the road to us literally is Camden. There are some barriers there. And I think even within the boroughs, we know that there is a real huge difference between the affluent and the poor. And I've heard statistics like within 10 years, there will only be social housing and the incredibly wealthy in both of our boroughs. Added to that, I think 91% of the people who live in Camden and Islington don't work in Camden or Islington. So there are some really huge challenges. And I think that a phrase that a friend of mine said kind of rings true to me, which is that I don't want to own a yacht, but I want to have a friend who does, who will trust me with the keys. And what I mean by that is we aren't necessarily going to get everybody to a place where everyone owns yachts. But if you're not using it on the weekend, and you can trust me, and I can utilize that space, or I can utilize that opportunity because there is a relationship of trust, I don't need to own a yacht. I can interact with what's already there, and I can feel that I'm a part of it, and I can take the most out of that opportunity. So I think that those are some of the barriers that we face, because we aren't going to change the fact that there is this huge financial divide. That's not something that's easy to overcome. But we can look at how individuals are able to access the amazing wealth of things that are there.
Excuse me. It might be slightly out of your remit, but there was also talk about the retailers being not for the young people, and there not being a lot of places. Of course, you have not designed the new development, but do you see any ideas developing on what can we do to bridge that gap?
I feel like I did love the comment where the young person said there's a really big difference between N1 and N1C. Part of that is because I think I probably work more in Cali, so if I use Caledonian Road, it is much more of a community road, whereas there is very much a feeling that that is for other people. And if I take, I was actually in Stratford recently, and if anyone's been to Westfield is amazing, but everyone in Stratford still uses Stratford Centre. which doesn't look anything like Westfield, because there is this feeling that this is for us. I thought, yeah, this is normal. I thought that Stratford Centre would have closed down immediately as Westfield comes, but it is probably more buzzing in there than it ever used to be. So there is a need for both. There is a need for both to be supported, but there needs to be an understanding and, again, a feeling and a sense that I can go from one area to another. I think that that's really an important part of it.
Thank you. Well, let's open up the floor for any questions. I can cough off. There's one down here in the front.
Yeah, thank you for all your insights. I found it really interesting. But I think it covered like a lot of this sort of a socially inclusive future and a safe future. And some of the people were talking about things like air pollution. So what about building a sort of healthy and environmentally sustainable future for these young people? What sort of role do things like schools, social enterprises, charities and businesses have to play in working with young people to see the sort of environmental and well-being perspective of what they want from their future as well?
Good question. Is that for any one of the panels, or? Yes. Anyone want to?
I would say, not so much on the environmental side, but on the well-being and health side, I think for youth charities now, there aren't the public services there delivering what they used to. So if you take mental health, for example, it's just not accessible for young people. There isn't enough statutory support out there. So you're finding that youth workers, and we're the same, we call ourselves a one-stop shop at New Horizon. So in theory, everyone can access everything they need, whether it's seeing a nurse, seeing a counsellor. You'll find that youth organisations, and even the small ones, are having to do all of those things now because the young people can't get it elsewhere. I think it's a slightly different point, but on this kind of Coal Drops Yard, Granary Square thing, it's brilliant, invest in the area, but if you talk to young people, they also want their area invested in as well, and it needs to work for them in a kind of whole sense, because I think a lot of young people see this as the area's being developed, but it's going to push us out. It needs to bring us with it, not the other way around.
It's interesting, actually. I know when Eurostar first moved to this area, and certainly when I came in 2009, we were very conscious that there was this fabulous regeneration and opening of new retail and so on. But actually we just felt very strongly we didn't want to in any way create or amplify that sense of the divide. We wanted to do the opposite. And I think that was really what drove the involvement in urban partners, the work with the local schools, the well-being walk, all these kinds of initiatives, because, and indeed the desire to be able to recruit from the local area if we can, because that's how you want to build the connectivity. And it is a constant challenge, and in many ways the more upscale the area becomes, the more of a challenge it is to create that, to build those bonds and create that connectivity. And it's, I think that, that's one of the biggest challenges with the regeneration of the whole area.
I think one of the things I was thinking about, because I saw that part of the video specifically about air pollution, it's actually never a conversation I've ever had with a young person. I do feel that it is something that's much more on us as adults, that we kind of broke it, we kind of need to fix it for them. And I think that because I find for a lot of young people that I've spoken to, this is just the world that they've grown up in. And we've got to find the ways to help them both understand the issue and what the things that they can do and what we should be doing to kind of help that.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? There's this along there.
Hiya. Wisdom, I have to say, I think you hit the nail on the head with what you were saying earlier. I think there's a massive issue with barriers to entry for people entering spaces, and going back to your point about the Jay-Z concert, I think each individual would have had their own barrier, but the underlying feeling for all of them is, I do not belong here, and that's what we really need to break down. I recently did some work for something called the Loneliness Lab, which was looking at how we can foster social integration in the built environment. And one of the things we realised by talking to the community was that the services are there and they're available, but people don't feel like they are invited and they're welcome to join in. And one of the things that we trialled was looking at shopkeepers becoming community champions because they're trusted in the area and they have authority and they have knowledge on the area, and how they can be used in order to encourage and invite people that would otherwise feel excluded from certain spaces into those spaces.
Yeah, no, totally. I used to work in Tower Hamlets, and if anyone's been to Tower Hamlets, Canary Wharf is like a spaceship that descended and split that borough in two. If you live in Poplar or you live in Isle of Dogs, there's actually two walkways, only two entrances that you can walk onto the island. It does not in any way feel welcoming. And the issue is kids will grow up seeing these buildings and seeing, literally in that sense, all of the wealth from the world funneled across their gardens, but not have any access to it. And I once took one of my young people, Barclays were doing an event, and one of the most powerful things was, he introduced himself as like, my name's John Parry, I live over there. And he could point to his tower block from where he was, and this was the first time he'd ever been in Barclays. And I think it's about overcoming those barriers, like you say, and it's only done through relationship. I'm gonna holler out Steve from CYP, because he's done an amazing job in making sure that the relationships with all the young people that he has get into all of the areas that he is in. And it is about finding more people like Steve in various different areas who've got those relationships already, and empowering them and asking them, what do you need? And how can we help? Because like we said, I think it was a great comment about the laptops earlier. So many companies, we just throw away laptops where that could be of amazing use, even if it's 3 years old. I'm still using Windows 7. I really don't like Windows 10, right? So it's cool. Do you know what I mean? And it's about understanding those sorts of issues. But it is, I do find it is getting past the, will I be embarrassed? And if anybody, to give you an idea of how that feels, just to remind us, if you've ever, I also run a modeling agency, amongst other things. And one of the issues that we have, and I talk to a lot of our models, is that they don't always appreciate how intimidating they are. So if any of you have ever been in the situation of wanting to talk to someone that you find attractive and finding that feeling of, I'm not sure if what they're going to say, that feeling of embarrassment stops people even asking. So I'm not even going to consider, do I come here? Because I'm assuming that the answer is already going to be no. So rather than go through the embarrassment of having that done publicly, let me not try. And it is, again, it is about relationship. Is the key thing that brings people over those barriers. The last thing I'll say, sorry, I'm speaking a lot, is that I work in the creative industries. And one of the things that I realized was that the creative industries is always based on who you know. So you immediately go, did you work with XYZ? If you've come from a background where gangs are prevalent, right? The last thing you ever do is tell people who you know. Because you literally don't know if the person standing in front of you has got beef with your cousin and will stab you as a result. And I'm serious. So as a point of networking, until you get past that, well, actually, I should talk about this because they might very well be interested and they might then know this person who could help me with this. You don't even get to that point. And again, it's all about relationships, breaking those barriers.
I would just like to add, though, that I think Urban Partners are doing a stunning job with that, because I have meetings with Urban Partners where they literally sit down and say to me, what do you need? They ask that exact question to me. And so many of the local businesses are doing so much for us and therefore gaining exposure. Like Havas is doing this massive project with us. Eurostar do work with us. I mean, I could go on. There's loads of them doing it. They're also doing things like offering work experience placement to our students. So those barriers are, it's going to take time and it's a long journey, but they are gradually being broken down, and students are, the mystery of these big new businesses is being demystified. You know, it's as Maria Fidelis is located in one of the best locations there is. I'm certain of it, and I think we'd be foolish not to make use of the places we've got around here. But that is beginning to happen, I think.
Any more questions? I saw a couple over there.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Oh yeah, I think for the longest time we've been blaming, we've been putting pressure on businesses to sort of do something. How much would you guys blame the educational system for basically not prepping students with practical skills to basically navigate their way through life? Like they don't teach us about, mortgages, buying a house, taxes, emotional intelligence. I mean, you were just talking about how one of the things that holds students back from going into professional environments is lack of confidence. And I feel like if you look at a child is very creative from a young age, and then the older they get, the creativity is killed slowly. So we go from a mindset of abundance to a mindset of scarcity, and now we place mental barriers on ourselves. So I'm wondering now, how much blame will you guys put on the educational system? Because the educational system is the one that's supposed to prep us for the businesses that are out there. I think that there's opportunity out there, and I've taken full responsibility for my own destiny now that I have this mindset of abundance. So, like, what do you guys have to say for that? And no offense, who's the one that works there? Georgie. Yeah, sorry, no offense. I'm not. I mean, we need more.
I agree. Like fundamentally, I wish I could teach about mortgages. I don't understand them. I'm never going to be able to buy a house. That's what I mean. So I think there is a very real point in what you're saying. As schools, we have a statutory requirement that we have to fulfil. There are certain things that we have to teach kids. I'm very for it. So, within the sixth form, HSBC came in and delivered a 3-week program on financial literacy because I thought I completely agree with you. I think it's so important. I think our educational system, I mean, I could sit here and talk to you about it for hours. I think it's fundamentally flawed. I think there is a lot in what you're saying. Only today, I've booked in something for the sixth form called the self-esteem team. Emotional intelligence, you were talking about that. They're fantastic. I mean, I'm going to bankrupt the sixth form hiring them, but I think there's a huge amount in what you're saying, and yes, I think you're completely right that we can blame the educational system for a lot of the reasons why our kids are fundamentally unprepared for the world out there.
Phil, did you have a point?
I mean, I totally agree. It's a great question. I think for me, probably the biggest problem is the obsession with league tables. This obsession if you have to have a certain amount of pupils getting a certain amount of things to then go up the league table, and if you don't, you'll expel. I mean, it is bonkers. I just think that should be removed instantly. The other bit of it is, and I imagine this is why you're taking control of your own destiny, is you used to have this thing of kind of school is for academic learning, and then what happens outside is where you do all that stuff. But the reality is all what goes on it's just been cut to nothing. So youth clubs, all this provision that used to go on outside of school, it's just been decimated. So the opportunities just aren't there where people do build confidence, resilience, self-esteem, all that kind of stuff. So it's a bit of a perfect storm, but it's good that you've got yourself, you know where you're going. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to stop you, Euston, because I think we would like one more question from the... yeah, let's go.
My name's Ahmed. I actually live on Copenhagen Street. I was the one who actually created the film with Havas. I'm like one of few who've actually grabbed opportunities from living in this area. But one thing that I would... Yeah, from CYP also. Big up, Steve. But yeah, one thing that I would definitely say is echo one of my friends, Samuel King, what he said about collaboration with the youth. And I look around here now, and obviously Destination Next and Urban Partners is about the next generation, right? I look around, it's probably about 5 people under the age of 23. There's so many empty seats. So like, why not bring youth in here? Why isn't there like a youth panel where youth, if you don't want to find out what youth actually think, yeah, the video is good, but why not actually have like a youth panel? Do you know what I mean? So like, we are the next generation. So actually work with us. Even like, Cold Drop Yard. I see a tweet from Urban Partners that they're hiring. Have they gone into schools to say we're hiring to 16-year-olds? Have they come into our youth clubs to say we're hiring? They haven't. So I feel like there's a lot of things they need to do to actually collaborate with us and actually understand us. Like he was saying, there's so much creative talent in my area, and I know a lot of people who grabbed opportunities, but again, it's just not knowing the opportunities there. And I feel like, again, sometimes in this day and age, just who you know what I mean? Not even what you know, so yeah.
I totally agree.
I've been involved in a lot of this, and what I've found is that it really helps from a business point of view. You know, they were talking earlier on about what can charities do better, as an example. Because it's very difficult for a business to hear a lot of voices about a thing, to be able to really pick it out. It really needs the people who know the young people to be able to kind of speak on their behalf, purely because of, sometimes because of time and sometimes because of other reasons. But I've found there's been lots of situations where I've been in where it's like, let's get a youth panel together, and it seems like the best thing to do. But the people running the youth panel don't know the youth well enough to be able to interpret what they're saying back. And I think sometimes it is about, again, knowing the stakeholders who know people and who know the young people who've got a voice and can pick out, well, this person really knows what's going on in this area, you should speak to them. And I think, again, it is about having those relationships. And obviously, we do all of these things in school time often. So we don't do these kind of events sometimes in the evening. So it is often difficult in that barrier as well. But it is...
So how do we do that then?
Because this is just, I tend to find, and I'm strangely defending this, but like, I tend to find that this is part of work, and it's only for those who see it beyond their work that they tend to turn up at these events after 6 o'clock, which is the point at which you would get more young people involved. So it's the balance of that.
Thank you so much. And that was a really good point. Certainly something that we can take forward and think about, like everything else that has been here today. Thank you so much to the panel for discussing. Thank you for your great questions. Thank you.